Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sterling Heights City Council to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, bless our elected officials. Grant them courage and wisdom to do what is right for all citizens. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Ms. Riska, can we please have the roll call? Here.
Raski,
Here.
Kaski,
Present.
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 Here.
Present.
Council, we need approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the agenda.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item on our agenda tonight is a report from our city manager, Mark Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to begin by just reminding everyone of our holiday schedule. In observance of Christmas and New Year's, we will be closed Friday, December 23rd, and Monday, the 26th, and then the same for the following week for New Year's. So that would be December 30th on that Friday, and then Monday, January 2nd, and then we'll be back to normal business. So that includes all of our facilities. The good news is the refuse collection will not change at all during the holiday schedule. And I wanted to remind everyone, as you think about taking your trees down, we are continuing our city recycling, Christmas tree recycling program, so you can start setting your trees out on January 2nd, and that runs through February 3rd, so please take note of that. Now, I wanted to also highlight the good work of our city employees and departments who generously gave during the holiday season. We helped 22 families through our holiday assistance program, coordinated through our community relations department, and our director, Melanie Davis, who's with us this evening. And we have a number of partners who help out with that program, including churches, businesses, and employees, and so on. And the families that are helped really greatly appreciate everyone's effort. And of course, our police department continued with their 25th annual Cops and Kids, and they helped 40 children purchase toys, clothing, and gifts for their families. And that was coordinated with the Sterling Heights Fraternal Order Police Lodge 118, our Sterling Heights Police Department, and also Target, who's been a partner with this program for quite some time. Special thanks to Sergeant Margaret Courtley, who helps coordinate this program every year. And then lastly, in our Department of Public Works, we have the Ken Stempowski Memorial Food Drive, and they raise all sorts of significant food that is then donated to food shelters throughout the area. So we appreciate all the employees' good work during this holiday season. And Mayor, as you know, we've been talking about the good work that our boards and commissions do, and we've been highlighting this good work all through the year. It's been really fun and I think enlightening to see the outstanding work that our boards and commissions do. And these are volunteers that are appointed by the mayor and the city council, and we have staff liaisons that help out, but they do the lion's share of the work. So we're really pleased this evening to highlight the Board of Review, and our city assessor, Robin Palazzolo, will be kicking this off and introducing an important board member as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vanderpool, Mr. Koszewski, and members of council. I'm here tonight to provide some insight in the inner workings of the Board of Review. The Board of Review consists of 6 members in total who are appointed by council and serve 2-year terms. Board of Review members must be residents of Sterling Heights and must receive training approved by the Michigan State Tax Commission at least once every 2 years. The Board of Review meets in the months of March, July, and December. The Board of Review convenes for 4 sessions annually. The first meeting is an organizational meeting and is held on the Tuesday following the first Monday in March. The purpose of this meeting is for the board members to get organized. At this meeting, the members will form 2 committees of 3 and establish which members will sit on each committee. They will elect a chairperson and a secretary for each committee. They will also receive the certified assessment roles and review any statutory or policy changes. The March Board of Review meetings convene on the third Monday in March and are held for no less than 3 calendar days. These meetings are held for the purpose of hearing appeals of valuation, classification, hardship exemptions, and disabled veterans exemptions. It is important to note that the March Board of Review meetings are the only meetings where appeals of valuation can be heard. The Board of Review also convenes on the third Monday in July and the second Monday in December. The July and December sessions are held for the purpose of making corrections to the assessment rolls based on mutual mistakes of fact, qualified errors, and for hearing appeals requesting hardship exemption and disabled veterans exemptions. All of our board members are fantastic, and I am so grateful to each of them for serving on our board. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Ray Nadolski, who is the chairperson of one of our Board of Review committees. Mr. Nadolski has served on our Board of Review for over 13 years, and we are so very fortunate to have such a dedicated board member. He has been a real estate agent for 20 years, and his unique perspective has been a great benefit to the Board of Review. He is here tonight to say a few comments about why he serves on our board, which will conclude this presentation. Mr. Nadolski, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Let's bring that microphone up just a little bit there. Good evening. Good evening. Back in 2008 and 9, a guy named Matt Schmidt asked me to come and serve on a board, and told me at that time it'd only be a couple of days. Well, we all know what happened in 2008 and 9. It was about 3 weeks. So it's been a lot better since 2008 and 9, not only on the boards, but also in real estate in general. So what I try and do on the board is I just try to be honest with, the petitioner. I mean, they are taxpayers, after all. We don't want to argue with them. We don't want to fight with them. And the value appeals bring some proof forward. I can take a look at the value appeals they have and review it with my friends on the board, and we can determine if it's a valid appeal. On the hardships, we now have people raise their right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole nothing but the truth. And I just stare them right in the eye and say, okay, are you telling the truth? I'm looking at you. So it's been interesting since we started doing that a couple of years ago. So the hardships have gone down, correct, Robin? Since we started doing that, so I don't know why. But anyway, thanks very much for your attention, and hope everybody has a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz, I love the glasses.
And Mayor, speaking of real estate, I know you all take great pride in the fact that Sterling Heights is known as having some of the highest property values in the state. We have consistently ranked in the top 5 statewide, which is a good thing because a home is often an individual's largest asset. So to have your asset growing and to have such a strong valuation in Sterling Heights is a very good thing. So in Macomb County, we rank #1 in terms of residential valuation. So the only city in Macomb County with the highest, most valuable residential valuation. And as I mentioned, in the top 5, when we look at all the categories statewide, and that's residential, commercial, industrial, to name just a few. So it's good news, and we appreciate the good work of the Board of Review and certainly our city assessor. It's complicated work, too, and they do an excellent job. And Mayor, shifting gears now, we'd like to focus for a minute, well, actually about 20 minutes, on our final presentation of the Marijuana Facilities Task Force report. And we'll pull that up to start to run through it. So the purpose of the Marijuana Task Force was to research community interest and best practices with respect to marijuana facilities allowed under state law and report back to City Council. And our report was due October 31st. I'm pleased to say we We met that deadline. We submitted a very comprehensive report to the city council. It's publicized on our website, and tonight we're going to review some of the highlights of that report. I wanted to highlight the individuals that served on the task force who worked very hard over the spring, summer, fall to develop the final report, and that includes our police chief, fire chief, our city development director, community relations director, economic development advisor, finance director, city attorney, city manager, city clerk, and city planner. So you're going to hear from a number of them this evening. We're going to start out with highlights from our city attorney, and then both our economic development advisor and our chief financial officer will explain from their vantage point the financial opportunities and challenges involved with this. So let us transition now to our city attorney, and he's going to highlight some of the state regulations and administrative law that go along with the marijuana facility regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Good afternoon and evening, Mayor and City Council. To start, I wanted to go over the current status of the law in Michigan, just to highlight. I don't want to get into the laws too much, but for those at home and in the audience, there are 3 current state laws concerning marijuana. These laws created 3 different industries in Michigan. First was created in 2008, it's known as the Medical Marijuana Act. This created what is known as the caregiver-patient model of providing medical marijuana to individuals and essentially decriminalized the use of marijuana for medical purposes only. Under this model, registered patients are allowed to grow their own marijuana or get marijuana through state-registered caregivers who provide product and are reimbursed for their costs. It's not a commercial setting, though. In 2016, the state passed the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, also known as the MMFLA. This law created state licensing for commercial growing and processing and sale of medical marijuana to registered patients in the state. This essentially set up the first storefront provisioning centers in the state where a resident could walk into a retail marijuana store, purchase marijuana controlled through the state, as opposed to going to a caregiver's home for their medicine. In 2008, a statewide ballot initiative was passed, creating the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, also known as MRTMA or MRTMA. This law allowed for the commercial growing and processing and sale of non-medical marijuana in the state by anyone 21 years of age and over. All 3 of these laws and industries remain in effect today. Both the MRTMA and the MMFLA provide municipalities with an option to either opt in the case of medical marijuana or opt out in the case of what I'm going to call recreational marijuana. Like other states that have implemented marijuana on a commercial basis, the majority of municipalities in the state, in Michigan, have chosen not to allow commercial sales of marijuana in their community. As of July of 2022, only 161 municipalities out of 1,773, or 9% in the state, have opted in. For medically, only 125 of those same municipalities have allowed recreational marijuana facilities in their jurisdiction. Many, however, do allow both, so the numbers get a little skewed and you have to really dig down to see which ones are allowing one or both. After this past election, a total of 268 out of 1,773, or 15% of municipalities, allow one or both medical and recreational marijuana facilities. As of December, municipalities that allow either medical, adult use, or both has increased just slightly after this past election to 15.1% of the state. Active licenses issued in the state as of July 31st, 2022 are listed on this screen by type of facility of note. There are 447 medical marijuana and 541 recreational provisioning centers active in the state at this time. Again, many of these provisioning centers have both medical and adult use licenses. With respect to Macomb County communities, There are currently 19 dispensaries that are, or provisioning centers, as they're also called, located approximately 20 miles of the city and within the city, from the city, I should say. There are 6 adult-use dispensaries that deliver to residential properties within Sterling Heights, including 2 dispensaries currently located in Utica, providing both medical and recreational marijuana. Up to 15 additional dispensaries are anticipated to be located just south of us in Warren, pending the outcome of some ongoing litigation. The list of Macomb County communities that have allowed marijuana facilities are listed here. Since the issuance of the report, Chesterfield Township was added to that list. From a community impact perspective, so one of the parts that we did as a team is we really wanted to survey communities that allowed these commercial enterprises to be in their communities and to really see what impact they might have had. From a law enforcement perspective, multiple police departments were interviewed with dispensaries or provisioning centers in their municipality. They were polled. And as an interesting side note, there was no significant increase in any crime or public safety issues reported. There had been some concerns raised by residents in the past at forums regarding this, but it appears that the communities that we have interviewed had little to no indication of any increase in crime or problems. We looked into impaired driving. The state has numbers that are available online. While there's been an increase in marijuana-involved accidents, that's just from a function of having legalized marijuana in the state. There's no evidence to suggest that allowing any dispensaries in Sterling Heights would have significant traffic safety impact. Impact on illicit grow operations. So as some residents may know, the city has been cracking down vigorously on what we call illicit grows, which are people not following any of the laws and are just growing out of their homes and funding the black market, so to speak, of marijuana. The evidence that we see so far is that allowing dispensaries in Sterling Heights is not going to decrease the black market because of the current federal law and the availability to transport it out of state to other states that don't have medical or recreational marijuana licenses available. So they tend to feed that industry. Our police chief is here tonight, and he can comment more on these specific public safety issues. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Jennifer Varney and Luke Bonner to discuss the financial and economic impact issues.
Thank you, Mr. Koszybski. So there are 3 types of potential revenue that the city could receive by allowing a marijuana establishments. The first is the annual adult use marijuana payment from the state of Michigan. Now, these are payments that are based on the taxes and fees that are collected by the state, basically sales tax. And 15% of the amount collected is distributed to municipalities based on the number of establishments in this jurisdiction. So for fiscal 21, the amount distributed equated to $56,453 per establishment. But it is widely expected that the per facility amount will decrease in future years as the price of marijuana is decreasing. So therefore, that will decrease the annual amount that we could expect to receive. For our financial analysis, we assumed about a 30% decrease from the 56,000, and that was based on, information from the Department of Treasury. The second revenue source is through application and renewal fees. The law allows municipalities to charge a maximum of $5,000 fee per application and per renewal, and this is to defray the costs of administration and enforcement. So if we allowed facilities, we would see an initial larger income as maybe about 30 or so applications, but then depending on how many we actually approved, that income would go down because it would just be an annual renewal fee. And lastly, the city could see increased property taxes due to redevelopment of properties to house these facilities. So based on an estimate of similar establishments in neighboring communities, city property tax increase of about $5,300 annually per establishment is estimated. I assumed a taxable value increase of about $400,000 per establishment redevelopment. So of course, there's also costs to administer the program. Some of these Costs would include consultant fees to review the initial applications, ongoing administrative fees for renewals and enforcement, and attorney fees for the development of the ordinance and the administrative process, as well as legal fees for potential litigation. Now, legal fees are very difficult to estimate, but nearly every community that has allowed limited licenses has been involved in some sort of litigation with the applicants that were not selected. This chart estimates the potential net revenue to the city over a 5-year period in 2 different scenarios. The first scenario assumes that the city would allow 5 provisioning centers and receive 30 applications. In this scenario, the average annual revenue over the 5-year period would equate to about $178,000 per year. Now, of course, if we allowed more provisioning centers, the revenue would increase. And so the second scenario assumes 10 provisioning centers would be allowed, and then the average annual revenue would equate to $410,000 per year. Next, the Economic Development Advisor, Luke Bonner, will go over the indirect economic impact to the city, as well as the community engagement efforts undertaking as a part of this process.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Varney. For the economic impact research, we took a look at some existing studies on economic impacts, and we also interviewed a local dispensary just to get an understanding of the operation. So for our purposes, we looked primarily at dispensaries and provisioning centers because they're the most prevalent and what we would most likely expect out of this kind of operation. What we found essentially is that they operate very similarly to small restaurants or small retail operations. They typically have between 12 and 15 employees, making between $15 and $17 per hour, with managers making 70,000 plus bonuses. So that would be fairly typical of what you would see, for example, out of a T-Mobile store, is a good analogy, or a restaurant like a Chipotle, for example. So based on that, we looked at the total wages and we did a multiplier for just the wages itself. So 12 to 15 employees per location, we're looking at about a $530,000 in total wages with an economic multiplier of 2.398, which is actually a little bit higher than a typical retail multiplier, which is more around 1.8. So it does have a little bit of a higher impact. So indirectly then, about 1.2 million in additional wages outside of the dispensary that could have an impact on. We also undertook some community engagement in a few different forums. We had 2 different forums. One was a stakeholder forum, which we had a pretty diverse group of community stakeholders between health systems, school districts, utility like DTE, local businesses, clergy, developers, local brokers. We had a resident forum, which is open to all residents. Both forums were facilitated by Strategize, who we've used quite a bit over the last year for a lot of our facilitation. And then the third aspect of community engagement was a community survey, which was a statistically valid survey, which is for over 400 responses, and that was done by the ETC Institute, who we've used before. Essentially, in both stakeholder forums, there was a lot of the same interest in terms of what folks thought may be negative about allowing dispensary operations in the city. There's a lot of concern about mental health, about physical health, traffic, congestion, property values, and on the flip side, there was a lot of optimism for what it could do for creating jobs, for increasing property values, and the like. The survey results for this particular slide was focused on one question, and please rate your level of agreement with the following statement. Sterling Heights should allow the retail sale of marijuana in commercial industrial areas. So from a survey perspective, we're about 59% between strongly disagree and disagree, and roughly 40% of strongly agree and agree. And this is very similar to the 2017 survey that was conducted by the same group, where essentially it was a 60-40 split between strongly disagree, and agree. The forums were a little bit more split, I would say more down the middle between people that were in favor of this and people that were opposed to it. I think what we noticed, generally speaking, for those of you that attended, folks that were opposed to it were a little bit more emotional about it. And folks that were supportive, obviously were very supportive of the positive impacts it could have on the community. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to City Attorney Koszybski.
Thank you, Luke and Jennifer, appreciate it. In looking at this, some of the questions that we always hear is, what is this going to look like, or what could it look like? So what we did is we went out to the communities that have implemented this and tried to look at their ordinances and look at their zoning and licensing considerations to see what the good, bad, and ugly were. So the good news is, with the MMFLA and the MRTMA, municipalities do have some latitude with respect to zoning and varying degrees of licensing controls. So it's not as though we would lose any control or a lot of control when if these establishments were ever to be allowed. As part of our report, we did take a careful look at these communities and addressed with them their concerns and asked for what their best practices were and what they found over that time. We used our city's consultant, Wade Trim, and we interviewed those communities. You can go to the next slide. So the common zoning questions where they would put them would be in medical areas, industrial, commercial, downtown districts, adult use. And zoning amendments, they would use zoning as of right, overlay districting, or special land use, and with great emphasis on buffering. What's important to know about this is this is where the litigation has been coming from. Because of litigation, careful consideration of zoning ordinance and extensive planning and the impact needed to be considered before any type of information could be considered. Licensing considerations. So the MMFLA provides the most flexibility. The law, when it was created, gave really broad authority for time, place, and manner regulation for the cities and municipalities. MRTMA is a little bit different. It prohibits a municipality from adopting resolutions or regulations that conflict with the MRTMA and or any state rule that is issued, and that is ever changing, so sometimes your laws can conflict. It also prohibits what is called unreasonably impractical regulations, and again, that seems to be where the litigation is going to go from here. There was a recent case, actually on December 15th, the Court of Appeals dealt with out of the city of Berkeley that confirmed that a municipality ensures that licensing, you can have the best licensing suited to comply with the laws within a particular municipality, which gives us a little bit more control again, because now we can look at it and say, is it a sustainable project? If we are promoting sustainability in our municipality, then that's something that is specific to us. It allows us to regulate time, place, and manner of operation, which is good. But it still does not allow us to impose any unreasonably impractical conditions, and that has not been litigated to its full extent yet, so it's a little wishy-washy on what that means. But with time, that should flush out in the courts. We also asked about licensing and zoning best practices. We conducted the interviews and asked them to provide examples of best practices as well as potential pitfalls. The most common response was that the initial startup phase from drafting the ordinance to implementation and selection of applicants would require a significant amount of administrative time. The report lists dozens of comments, and we have listed only a few here, such as being selective about where to allow these types of facilities, prohibiting full licenses if all approvals are gotten. These were practices that were by trial and error in other communities. Really requiring applicants to engage with nearby residents and businesses as well, as it was a key factor for many of them. And now what I'll do is I'll turn this back to Mr. Vanderpool.
And Mayor, just in conclusion, we have highlighted the very comprehensive report this evening. However, those who want more details on the report, you can simply scan the QR code that's before you right now, and it will take you directly to the report. Or you can go to our website and look at the report as well. But this entire report that the city council received is available to anyone who would like to review it. So at this point, the city council has a number of options to consider. You've only had less than 60 days to really delve into it. We can continue to get community feedback, although, we have done a significant amount in terms of soliciting stakeholder feedback, as you heard this evening. But still, those who want to comment, they can simply email the city at cityhall@sterling-heights.net and provide us your thoughts. Be happy to continue to share those with city council. We certainly would welcome any thoughts or comments from city council this evening. And I should remind everyone, we do have a strategic planning session coming up on January 23rd. We would welcome additional comments and feedback at that point as well. So I just wanted to conclude by thanking the mayor and the city council for creating the task force and charging us with the objectives that were set forth initially. I think we met them, but we're happy to provide any additional information that the council may desire, and we're happy to address any questions this evening as well. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. Since we have everyone here, I will open it up to the council to make any comments or ask any questions that they might have on this report. So council, would anyone like the floor? Going once, twice? Nobody? Okay. All that work, no discussion. Okay, I think probably this is going to come back at some point. Look, I want to say to the marijuana task force members and participants, personally, thank you very much for what you did. I appreciate it. I know I kind of got this started back in the spring, and I don't think that there's any way to avoid having a discussion about marijuana in the long term here. That, I would predict that Sterling Heights is going to have marijuana facilities. It might not be because of this council, it might not be because of the next council, but it is coming. It is an inevitability. I don't believe there's anything that's going to stop it. And so in order for us to have all the information, I thought that this would be the best way to do it. I trust our city administration a lot more than I would trust a consultant. And God knows there's been no lack of consultants reaching out to me, and I'm sure the members of the city council, to provide us with their input and their expertise. But, we speak very highly of each one of you, and we think each one of you does a tremendous job running your departments. So we wouldn't trust anybody else to do this. I know I certainly wouldn't. So we also know that you all have very busy jobs as it is, and you're short-staffed, and you have more work to do than you can keep up with. So adding a project like this onto your plates this year, I understand was probably a hardship for all of you. So I thank you for going through this exercise, providing the report, which is thorough, comprehensive, professionally prepared, and a really, really tremendous work product. It's going to be helpful to me. I hope it's helpful to our city council in making a determination about what way to go. So, like I said, it doesn't appear that we want to have a discussion tonight about the merits of the report, what it says, what it doesn't say, and or if there are any other questions. But I would imagine at some point in the next month to 6 months that this is going to be an issue that comes back. Whether it comes back because the city council asks for it to come back, or whether it comes back because it's put before us by the public, by the marijuana industry, because that is the direction that it seems every city is heading. It just happened in Chesterfield. So we'll certainly be able to use this as a resource for when the time comes. So, Mr. Vanderpool?
Mayor, I just have one last item on my report, and it's good news, bad news. The good news is it looks like we're going to have a white Christmas. The bad news is I feel like the Grinch because we could possibly be in a snow emergency Friday, Saturday, and that means we may likely be enforcing our on-street parking prohibition when we are in a snow emergency. Means we'll be writing tickets. So I plead with the community in advance. I know it's difficult because you're going to have family members over. It couldn't be a worse time for enforcement. But it is so important if we are in a snow emergency that you remove your vehicles from the street. It's absolutely imperative to be able to get emergency apparatus through our neighborhoods if need be. So I strongly encourage residents who are not already, we have tens of thousands of people who have signed up for our emergency alert system. You can go to our website and do that. You can get a text message or an email as soon as we declare the emergency, the time frame for when enforcement would start, and so on. So again, good news, we're going to have a white Christmas. Bad news, we might be enforcing on-street parking, but please stay tuned. We're monitoring this very closely. Our municipal security team will be meeting Thursday afternoon, and we'll be charting the course based on more accurate weather predictions then. But that concludes my report. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. The next item on tonight's agenda is an ordinance introduction, and this is to introduce the First Amendment to the Appropriations Ordinance for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. We have a presentation from Jennifer Varney, our Finance and Budget Director. Ms. Varney.
Good evening again. I'm here tonight to introduce the First Amendment to the Appropriations Ordinance. As you know, the budget is normally amended twice each year, once in December and once at the end of the fiscal year. So the First Amendment primarily carries forward unspent funding from projects that were approved last year that we didn't get quite completed, and then it also recognizes new grants and other items that have come before council since the budget was adopted. So this year, the main expenditures that increase in the First Amendment are, as I just said, reappropriated expenditures. We also had increases from settled contracts. There were 6 contracts that have been settled since the budget was adopted. So the primary reason for some of those increases was higher defined contribution matches and increased contributions to health savings accounts for most employees. There's also grant-funded expenditures included in the First Amendment, such as some for election supplies, firefighter physicals, and funding for a sobriety court. And there's also included estimated funds for the city branding strategy that was prioritized at the summer strategic planning session. The good news is we have offsetting revenues for most of those increases, including an increased revenue sharing estimate since the budget was adopted. We have grant revenue, obviously, that offsets the grant expenditures, and then we also did receive reimbursement from Macomb County for the Sears Vaccination Center. We just got that money about a month ago. We're still waiting on the FEMA money, though, but one of these days it's going to show up. The net result is a contribution to the general fund balance of just under $400,000, and that's about $90,000 more than the adopted budget. So this keeps our cumulative general fund balance at about 28%, or about $33 million. The budget for other city funds is being adjusted by about $19.9 million. 11.5 of that is basically due to unspent road projects that are carried forward to this year. And the carryover of unspent capital projects totals $5.8 million. And that includes about $1 million for the remaining expenditures on the new DPW building and about $2.1 million carryover for sidewalk gap and repair programs. Mr. Mayor, this is the first reading of this ordinance, which is scheduled for adoption at the January 3rd meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Varney. At this time, I'll open it up to the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? If not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Sarowski.
resolved to introduce the First Amendment to the Appropriations Ordinance for the 22-23 fiscal year.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion?
No, Jennifer, Ms. Varney explained it quite clearly, so I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, council, anyone else? I do have one brief comment. I spoke with Jeff Garapi a member of our planning commission, a member of our CERT team, and all around great guy and great volunteer for the city. As we've been expanding our special events throughout the year, I think that this past year we had probably more attendance at Music in the Park and the Farmers Market than any other year. We had a tremendous amount of people at Sterling Fest, and really, we had a Juneteenth celebration. We had food truck rally. We have a number of events going on, and behind the scenes, the CERT and Citizens on Patrol team do a tremendous amount of work supporting our police department, and they are not provided with a whole lot of equipment from the city of Sterling Heights. So I spoke with Mr. Garapi a few months ago, and he was asking about the process to maybe see if there could be something done, something put in the budget for some radio technology. Now, I believe that the radios that the police department use are quite expensive. And I think that they have maybe something like 2 of those for the CERT and COPS teams. And when I say COPS, I'm not referring to our police department, it's the Citizens on Patrol team that work throughout the community, not just on special events, but I see them out driving around through the neighborhoods and helping people out. There are other alternative ways that using cell phone technology, you can download apps and with some modifications have a pretty darn good radio system so that these folks can communicate with each other. I don't have a specific number right now, and I know that we don't necessarily need to do it at this time, but I think what I'll try to do is work with Mr. Garapi to have something more like a concrete proposal for what they could use and why they could use it and how it would benefit the residents and the city. And I don't think we're not talking about $100,000. We're not even talking, I don't think, half of that. So I will get that information. I just wanted to kind of give a heads up to the city council that I'm going to try to get that information to present at the next city council meeting. And perhaps we can have the chief weigh in on that next time as well. So, Mrs. Zarko.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'm going to agree with you because I think they do need some assistance. But if we could have the liaison to both of those groups sit down and meet to find out how we could, whatever is supplied to them would be interactive with the police department. I think that would be a benefit. So, in other words, instead of them choosing what they would like, to actually have somebody on staff do that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. In fact, my impression from talking with Jeff was that he was more looking at something where they could just communicate with each other. That it's difficult for the CERT team to communicate with all the other members of the CERT team when they're at an event to make sure they're getting people deployed where they need to be. And I'm certain if they can't communicate within themselves, then how are the police officers and firefighters communicating with them to make sure that they're where they need to be too?
And I understand a lot of time the communications is with their own cell phones.
Yeah.
That's how they communicate with each other.
Right.
And their
it's
personal
not-
phones. That's
right,
why,
it's the personal phones, and, Jeff kind of did a demonstration for me that with an app, it's sort of like the old Nextel phones, that rather than getting the phone out, scrolling to your contact, calling you, it's basically like a one touch, and then you're radioing with your cell phone to another person who has the app downloaded, and with earpieces and whatnot, it looked like it could be a cost-effective alternative to buying dozens of radios at a couple $1,000s a pop. So I'll get more information, and that's a good idea. I'll make contact with Jeff tomorrow and with the chief and see if we can get something presented by the next meeting.
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt?
Maybe we could get Mr. Garapi and who's the head of Citizens on Patrol? Is it Dino Spatafor and the liaison from the police department all working together to make sure that those two groups are covered with the same things? Because they do both work the same events usually.
Yes.
And even if they could talk to each other, that would be great too, and work cohesively together, so, just a suggestion.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. Okay, anyone else? Mr. Radke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think your idea is well-timed. I've never seen such crowds as we had this last year for both Music in the Park and the Farmers Market. They continue to grow, and I think helping out both the citizens on patrol and CERT with their ability to talk to each other is essential. The reason I decided to talk today was basically looking at the surplus we have in the budget. I just want to bring up again that we really should work through our master plan and our zoning map and code. It was originally, I think, budgeted for $200,000 to hire a consultant to help us with our zoning. Now that we have the surplus, that could pay for that without us having to even create, or take from some other program. With all the projects that have come through in the last several months, a couple times we spot zoned and we talked about what the future is, and our master plan does not meet our zoning map. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to use that money. And now that we have 3 new employees in the planning office who are ready to go, to get them working instead of having to wait for the new fiscal year. So I would urge my colleagues to think about that and to really think about how we can kind of prepare, because as it stands right now, the zoning map has not been updated since 1989, essentially. So it doesn't match the master plan, and frequently we are asking our zoning board of appeals and our planning commission to basically interpret 2 documents that are in conflict with each other. And they're doing the best they can, but it doesn't make much sense. And then, even more than that, I would urge my colleagues to look, today East Point released a master plan for the reimagination of 9 Mile Road throughout their community. It was done by McKenna, and in that, they make both large ideas about the roadway and also small code changes that I think could really benefit the North Van Dyke corridor and the other places, our mixed-use nodes that we're doing, including requiring that all buildings face the street, have entrances from the street, share parking, have one streetscape facade. I sent the report to Mr. Vanderpool, and I'm hoping that he's going to distribute it, but it really shows you with small code changes, how that could create a unified area. Because right now, we've done overlays, and we've done it as a piecemeal approach, and I think developers are trying to work within the overlays, but there's not a lot of instruction. And one thing they also said they're going to do is they're going to ban both office and residential use on the first floor of buildings that front 9 Mile Road. So new construction would be banned, which would create the streetscape that they want. Because if we allow residential and if they allow residential or office in those areas, it doesn't create the difference in what they're trying to do. So I would urge us to look at that report and think about advancing the money to really accomplish this project. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Anyone else? All right, with no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item tonight is to consider introduction of a map amendment to zoning ordinance number 278 to conditionally rezone property situated on the west side of Ryan Road, south of 15 Mile Road, in section 31 from O1 Business and Professional Office District to RM3 Multiple Family Mid and High Rise District. Case number PZ 22-0005. We have a presentation from our Assistant City Planner, Jake Parcell. Mr. Parcell.
Good evening, Council. We're here today for the development named Ryan Point Apartments. You can put that up. We have a presentation prepared by our Planner 2, Alexis Richards. This application is to rezone the property, as the mayor stated, from O1 to RM3 under conditional rezoning, with several variances that'll be included as part of the conditional rezoning that we'll touch on in this presentation. This was approved by the Planning Commission at the October 18th meeting. They were at the September 14th meeting, came back and made changes after Planning Commission comments, and were approved by Planning Commission at that meeting. The site is located on Ryan Road, south of 15 Mile. The current use is a vacant building, a former Knights of Columbus clubhouse. The master plan use, which this gives additional consideration to the application, designates the area as a traditional mixed-use node. Ultimately, the development will be a 3-story apartment building with 55 total units, 10 one-bedroom units, and 45 two-bedroom units, varying from approximately 680 to 900 square feet per unit, with a market rate cost of around $1,500 to $1,800 per unit. Property does not abut any single-family residences. There will be amenities on site, including grilling areas, pergola, walking trails, picnic space, and dog care stations that lend to the amenities that the people who reside on site can use. So here's the site. This is overall part of a traditional mixed-use node. It's in the staff report attached, but it's currently zoned O1. There's no O1 surrounding it. It's RM2 to the north and RM2 across on Ryan Road, and then there's R60 below it. The property directly to the south, R60, is a church. Here's the aerial video of the site to help your orientation. The drive at the south of the video is the entrance from Ryan Road. To the south, or to the top of the screen now, you'll see the church and the parking lot associated there. And then to the bottom of the video now, which is the north, is the residential, the zoned RM2 directly above it. I can recall this video may be a bit lengthy.
Yeah, it's a full 360.
Pretty cool.
So the site here will be completely redeveloped. The structure will be on the left side of the screen now, parking, and the right. The front of it will be more built directly onto Ryan Road, and there will be the pedestrian amenity in the rear of the structure. So here's just another aerial of the site. It's a relatively long and narrow site. It's approximately 2 acres. You can continue through these. This is just different views of the site. You'll see the residences to the left side there. More photos. So here's the traditional mixed-use node here. The master plan designated these, around 11 of them throughout the entire city. While this structure itself is not a mixed-use structure in terms of traditional mixed use with retail or office on the front and residence above it, it is adding to the designation of the traditional mixed-use zone by providing a new use on site and providing pedestrian amenities with it. The proposal is a single multifamily use, and it does bring the site closer into alignment with the master plan. Here's the overall site plan. As you can see, Ryan Road is on the right of the screen. The structure will be more built towards the road than the existing vacant Knights of Columbus clubhouse. Parking will go around it, and then in the rear of the structure, more on the left side of the screen, is where the pedestrian amenities will be. There is a trail, probable trailhead being proposed to connect it to the northern properties, and then a trail that will lead out from Ryan Road, slightly below where the pointer is there, that will connect it to the campus across the street. Here's the landscaping plan. The applicant has proposed a landscaping and a signage package that will comply upon final site plan review with the city's landscaping and sign ordinances. The renderings of the structure are here. I believe it is some corrugated metal with wooden balconies, and additionally there is brick on the facade for a variety of materials that will be used along with windows for each of the units. Continue through these. Here's the floor plan. Additionally, you can continue as you go, but these were 61 units were proposed between the September 14th and the October 18th meeting. The applicant revised their plans to show only 55 units, and that allows for more uses for the recreational space on site. Here are the modifications that will be a part of the conditional rezoning. Parking minimum, there's 133 parking spaces required on site by code. They are providing 98 parking spaces at 1.8 per unit. This fits in with the traditional mixed-use node in terms of eliminating parking and creating more active space on site. The parking at some points will be closer than the 25 feet required to the building. 30 parking spaces will be within 7 feet from patios and balconies of the dwelling units. Again, it's a relatively narrow and long site, which makes fitting the structure and the parking 25 feet away a bit difficult. There's a section in our code that requires parking for recreational vehicles and boats. We are striking this from this, and they will not be providing any parking for RVs. There is a required 6-foot masonry wall and 1 deciduous tree for every feet of green belt that require the major impact screening on a site like this next to a R60 zone structure. Since the R60 to the south is a church, they are providing a different landscape plan that reduces the 6-foot masonry wall because it's not residential. They're requiring 65% of the recreational space on site, 324 square feet. This was amended from the Planning Commission in September to October to increase this size to be more in alignment with the code. And they are providing, excuse me, a more dense development here on site in terms of the square footage of the bedroom units, which also helps align it with the master plan and the traditional mixed-use node as well. So here's a summary of the revisions that we went over. Ultimately, after feedback from the Planning Commission on September 14th, they reduced the unit count to create more recreational space, provide more pedestrian amenities, and better tie it in for a pedestrian standpoint on site. Essentially, this horizontal mixed-use building increases the density in the node. It adds new parking islands and reduces the parking to be more pedestrian-friendly and enhances the walkability of the site. For big picture considerations in terms of the master plan, the sustainability plan, and the Sterling Heights 30-year vision, essentially this node wants a development of different mixtures. As we noted already, it's a bit of a unique site, excuse me, in terms of its length and narrowness and size for development of this scale. It makes providing office or traditional mixed use relatively difficult on site. And the applicant has shown that they are willing to be in line with what the master land use plan refers to for a mixed use site. The sustainability plan, they are promoting walkability on site, promoting higher density in residential areas, and helping add to what we call horizontal mixed use in the node. So this is a use that doesn't currently exist in the node, but will increase pedestrian walkability and public transit to be utilized there. So people can travel along this corridor and node relatively easily without getting in their vehicle. And finally, in the 2030 visioning plan, the applicant has, in the revision, provided more abundant pathways for walking and biking, helping create this type of pedestrian feel in the node, and helping to increase the aesthetics of the front by providing a landscape plan that meets the code of ordinances that we have. We are open for questions now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. At this time, I will open it up to the audience. Would the applicant like to make a presentation, Mr. Ruggieri?
Good evening, everyone. Phil Ruggieri on behalf of the petitioner, Fadi Saman, and we have present in this room is Mark Shovers, our architect. I think the planning department's done an excellent job of giving an overview of our presentation. We have worked very carefully with the planning commission. We had an aggressive presentation initially with 61 units, a lot less recreational space, trying to work this product into this site because it has a building on it that's been vacant for over 3 years, and it was used as a Knights of Columbus facility, and I believe it didn't even have a certificate of occupancy. The former owner, prior to the acquisition by Mr. Saman, who presently owns the property, was a doctor who tried to obtain some type of medical service to go in that building, but of no avail. He had no proposals to lease that facility. So we came up with a plan, much from my experience with other clients, about bringing something to Sterling Heights that is unique. So I engaged with Fadi, Mark, and Giffords Webster. We came up with this urban look that seems to be very appealing, with a mix of stone, brick, composite materials to give it an urban feel. And then we integrated with the insight from Planning Commission to make this a pedestrian-friendly facility. We have a walking trail system throughout the property. We've talked to Henry Ford and the property to the north to try to integrate this walking system with their sites. And they haven't gave us the positive feedback that we wanted to, but they kept the door open. So down the road, I think they just want to see what the construction is going to look like and how it can really work in together. So that avenue has been left open. We think this is a great product that comes to our city. We've seen some different apartment complexes that have been approved by this council. We think this unique upscale product is necessary in our city to attract a lot of the young professionals, to keep options available for our community. Mr. Saman has recently bought 15 in Ryan, the Hatherley Commons, that was owned by the Froehling family. And he has just recently invested over $1 million in that facility already with the parking improvement and LED lighting. He's now redoing the entire sign package on that site. He's also acquired 18 in Van Dyke, the southeast corner of that shopping center, and he's redoing that center as well. He has a host of investments, and he's also a resident of Sterling Heights. But he's not new to our community. He's well entrenched here and his family, and he likes to continue in this fashion. And I've had the pleasure of representing him on a lot of his developments, and this one is very dear to me because I think this is something that we don't have in our city, and it would be one of the first. And I think it'll be an upscale, a little higher rent level. It's going to be market rate, but it's going to be in the higher end. And I think you'll welcome this to the community. There's a tremendous amount of commercial in that whole intersection. These people that can live there, you can bike, you can walk to all the commercial components, as opposed to trying to cram in some type of commercial use under the traditional mixed-use concept or master plan that has been designed. It's just too narrow to do that. So we've taken this narrow, long piece of land and created quite an extensive product that I think you'll enjoy having. So with that, I'm open for questions. Mark is as well. I think planning has done an excellent job, and I don't want to reiterate the same thing. And I thank you for your presentation. I think it's been well received, and we were thankful to have planning endorse it on a unanimous basis. At first, we thought it was going to be something very, very difficult to entertain, but I think with the input and the openness that we all had during those hearings, we came up with an excellent product. So I'm here to answer any questions with our team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruggieri. Appreciate the presentation. Okay, anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this item? Not, council, we need a motion.
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski.
Resolved to introduce a map amendment to zoning ordinance number 278 to conditionally rezone property situated on the west side of Ryan Road, south of 15 Mile Road in Section 31 from O1 Business and Professional Office District to RM3 Multiple Family Mid and High Rise District, case PZ22-0005, and direct applicant to finalize and propose agreements so that the city council may further evaluate the offer of conditional rezoning at the January 3rd, 2023 regular meeting.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Sarowski?
Yes, Mayor Taylor, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I've gone over this proposal and some of the renderings. I like this, I really do, and I appreciate Mr. Ruggieri's explanation of it. Mr. Saman has done quite a few things. He's done smaller areas, he's done housing, as well, individual housing, as well as these, I like his larger renderings and his larger developments. I like this because we've had in the past some people trying to cram a lot into a little bit. And this is not that. We don't have the 5-story, 6-story building being everything, a market, a grocery store, a salon, all crammed into this one space. This is housing. This is a beautiful building, by the way. You did a nice job on the architecture. I like it. I think it's in a nice area. It looks like it's going to be kind of a nice transition between the residential areas as well as the single-family residential areas, the apartments, and also the condos. I think this is beautiful. I like that you've done an increase on the recreation. I always like more recreation. People need to get out and get outside and do things. This gives us some transition with the ability, with the increased walkability. So it kind of hits all my points that I like to see in development of family, multi-use, either apartments or condos. So I'm very much in favor of this. I really do like it. It's a beautiful building. You know, my little artsy-fartsiness in me likes it. So I appreciate it. I thank you very much for bringing this to us. And I don't have any questions. The presentation was good. I like that it's not, as I said, it's not so crammed in, and it's dense, but not overly dense, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I have no further questions. Thank you.
That's what my wife says about me, Liz.
Dense, but not overly dense?
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyone else,
I will not
counsel?
argue that.
Anyone else? Mr. Radke?
Briefly, through the chair to the petitioner, this is a conditional rezoning, and I support what you're doing here. I think it's actually a very good site plan for this long, narrow property. There's a couple tweaks, and I can't have you do them. You have to suggest that you will do them. But for the pathway, which I think is tremendous, actually it really adds to the site value. There's no connection with the boulevard that doesn't travel through the building. I was hoping that on the north side of the building, you might put a connection directly from the path to the sidewalk to facilitate foot traffic of people who might be walking, so they don't have to walk through the patio of the building or through the building itself. Through the chair.
Good evening. Yeah, so that issue came up during planning commission. We are open to connecting that, but right now without Henry Ford connecting into it, it's kind of a dead end. So we didn't want to get people going down that path and then you get to the end, you go, where do I go now? And then you got to double back.
Which is a fair response. I just, something to think about if you want to create the pathway. I guess the other thing I would recommend is a connection somehow with the patio space in front, which looks tremendous, with the sidewalk in front, sidewalk on the south side of the property, because right now, looking at it, I have in our packet, page 112, there is an outdoor patio space which looks tremendous, which connects to the walking path, but there's no sidewalk that connects to the other sidewalk to that thing. So essentially, you have to go into the building and come out onto the patio and then take the walking path. So I figured maybe people are gonna cow path anyways, they're gonna make their own pathway, they're just gonna cut across your flowers, so you might as well just put
There is a little connection.
Well, is there,
Yes.
I'm looking at it
It's,
in ours.
yeah, I think it's kind of buried under like a
bush or something?
line. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a connection that gets you from Ryan to the patio.
Okay.
And then around the north side of
Just
the
so they don't
building.
have to go through the building, so there's an
Correct.
outdoor, there is an outdoor way?
Yes, there is a connection there.
That's all I have, just because it's going to, otherwise people are just gonna make their own path, obviously, and they're
Yeah.
gonna, that's my fear with the other walking path. If you don't add sidewalk, people are just gonna walk across your sidewalk and you're gonna have a muddy mess.
Yeah, I think that's in the future, if Henry Ford does connect and people start using that, because they will cut across the grass, that we would put in that connection at that point, but we don't want to draw people in if there's nowhere to go.
Okay, and then, through the chair to the planning department, I'm curious about the parking on site. It was reduced to 98. Is that the right amount, does the planning department think, or could it be reduced further? You know, I read studies that say that parking like this should be used 80% of the time. Are we in the 80th percentile of parking? Or is this a little bit more than we think is gonna be used? Because I'd rather see green space than empty parking lots. I was driving to this meeting today and I was passing empty parking lot after empty parking lot after empty, and it makes me insane because water runs off there, it pollutes the environment, it doesn't look good. I just want to make sure that we're right-sizing parking to what people actually do.
The requirement was 133.
Right.
We proposed 112.
Right.
But with our dialogue with Planning Commission, we reduced it further to 98.
Sure.
Then we inserted the islands and the landscaping to break it up and have it more pedestrian-friendly.
Right, and I'm wondering if you could even take it down further. I mean, this is a mixed-use node, it's.
We can
for-
work with planning in that regard if it makes sense. We
Well, if it
just-
makes sense, I want you to have enough spaces for.
Yeah,
your
we
tenants.
don't want it to be short and.
Correct.
We don't want them to be parking in other areas that they don't belong in, so. But if we could, we'll work with planning in that regard.
Because the books all say it should be 80% used. That's the goal, the 80th percentile. That it should be full, but not too full that you can't find a space. And that would be the goal I would ask all of our developers to do with our new buildings, is that the parking is used. Because if it's not being used, if it's just empty, then you're paying $10,000 for a parking spot that's just sitting there, where you could have units or something else in use instead.
We'll
I'd rather
certainly
you-
look at it and share with the planning.
Okay, well, other than that, I think this is a good development. I think it's gonna be an interesting setup. It looks like it's as close to the street as you can make it, but if you can make it any closer, I'd be willing to do that. But other than that, I'm in favor of this, and I'll be voting in favor. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Radke. Council, anyone else? Mrs. Zarko?
Mayor Taylor, I just have a couple of questions to the petitioner. So through the chair to whoever wants to answer my question. First of all, has the traffic study been done on this particular area? Only because the intersection itself of 15 and Ryan, we know, is a really busy intersection. And this one, this apartment complex only has one way in and one way out, if that's the way I see it. And because to me, I mean, it looks like it's in the right spot. I mean, for what we need. So that part of it I like. But I would be interested to see if there was a traffic study that would be done. And my second question is, how many outdoor entrances into the building are there total? And it looks like there's might be patios or something on the first floor, but that would be different than an actual entrance.
Four,
Like public entrances.
four.
4 public entrances, okay. Thank you.
And as far as a traffic study, I can only go by experience that an office complex or retail center would generate much more traffic than an apartment complex because people generally go to work in the morning, come back at night, and not much activity throughout the day, as opposed to an office or a commercial setting where they're in and out constantly. So the traffic would be a lot less intense with a complex such as this versus office or commercial, so. And I've had
And I
that
understand.
many times in a lot of different cases. And that's-
Okay, but it's also, there's a building there that has been occupied in 3 years, so there was no traffic.
Yeah,
So now you're adding 55 units, and you're assuming that almost everybody there is going to drive. I could be wrong, but you're adding 55 more people there. But I'm not going to, I just wondered if the study had been done. Not that that's going to change my mind on how I'm going to vote for this, but it's just that I'm interested because that is a really busy intersection.
sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
nothing further.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarco. Anyone else?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Just briefly, through the chair to Mr. Ruggieri. So, in the plans, we eliminated the RV and the boat parking. Does that mean that there will not be any RV or boat parking allowed
That is correct.
in regular parking spots?
Just all regular parking, yes.
Okay, so nothing will be allowed other
And
than,
that's something that's been the trend throughout our city.
right, right.
And we don't want that in there.
I just wanted to make sure that people don't assume that they can park their boat in a regular parking spot.
They'll be prohibited.
Okay. And as far as your 4 entrances, are they going to be secure entrances so that entrance can only be made by a resident or have a buzzer system or?
That is correct.
Okay. And then there's just the one driveway, so there's no access off of Beaver Neck?
No.
Okay. And my only concern is, through the chair to Mr. Parcell.
Yes.
So on our aerial on page 111, it actually doesn't show the church in the parcel to the south. It just shows an empty lot. So there is a church there, correct?
Yes.
So I'm worried about the dumpster placement in relation to any of these homes.
One of the modifications that the applicant made from the planning commission meetings when they came back was to move the dumpster 40 feet away from residential. So the dumpster complies with our current code.
Okay, and hopefully there's provisions made with whoever your refuse company is that there won't be 6 a.m.
No.
dumpster emptying.
That's
Just,
correct.
that's really all the questions I have. I think, as Mrs. Sarowski said, you know, we've had other developments come before us, and what I think really saves me with this one is that parcel to the south is not residential. And we don't have all those 3 stories of balconies overlooking single-family homes. So that is really,
Critical.
it's very important to me, so I appreciate that. And with that, I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Mr. Yanis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just might as well get back up, Mr. Ruggieri. That's good. I don't know if you're going to answer this or not. Yeah. Don't we all? So you know that we've had some situations here in Sterling Heights in regards to the apartments being leased by, and not being occupied by the people that are leasing them, correct? Sterling Landing
I've
is-
heard some stories.
Yes, you've heard some stories. So who's leasing these apartments? And how are we going to know that the people who are leasing them are living there?
How are you gonna know if the people leasing are living there?
Well, again, use Sterling Landings for an example, right? You look at what they did, the changes they felt that they had to make sure that the occupants of the apartments were the people who actually rented them. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I'm not
Okay,
clear on that, sorry.
so, we've had the situation at Sterling Landing where people would rent apartments, but they weren't the people that were actually living there.
I see, yes.
So
Well,
who's renting these apartments? And
there-
how-
the key here is this is an upscale complex. So the rent's gonna be above your normal market rate. So you're gonna have what I would consider screened quality tenants. And you cannot sublease your unit. It's gonna be that person, because you're gonna be accepted based upon your criteria, your credit rating, and so on. So they just can't lease it to somebody else. We'll have monitoring of that. That's all I can tell you. It's not something, if something slips through the cracks, ultimately it gets discovered. But
So basically, there's going to be a leasing agency that's going to be
yes,
leasing.
there'll be a leasing person on staff to monitor, and we have a 24-hour maintenance person that'll check things out as well. And if there's a slight suspicion in any way, we'll take care of it, because this is not a run-of-the-mill type complex. It's a very expensive complex, so it's gonna have a lot of monitoring features, a lot of security system involved. And in order to get the key fob to get into the building, you've got to go through the channels. And not everybody's gonna have that unless you've been qualified and accepted from the beginning. So I think there's enough precaution, and I understand there's been issues with some other locations, but I don't see that to be the case here.
Well, in this particular case, you're literally steps away from a residential neighborhood. And I want to make sure, Mr. Sman, that you're providing as much security as possible, not only for the people that are renting from you, but also the people that live just a few steps away in that neighborhood.
Absolutely.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yanis.
Thank you.
Mrs. Koski.
Mr. Ruggieri,
See, burning the calories.
was that halfway done?
No, it helps my back doing that.
I know we have seen developers come in to try and develop that property for quite a while. Question for you. If the path does not go through, because it seems like Henry Ford has not been really anxious about doing the connection, what if you kind of created that walking path to go down Rhine Road to 15 Mile Road and then over to Nelson Park? Because Nelson Park is on the north side and south side.
I like the
It's only
idea.
a half a mile away. The only thing is that Beaver Creek runs right next to CVS. And I'll tell you, that shrub grows and it blocks the view right there at the sidewalk. So somebody's going to have to yell at the city to get somebody to go out there and cut that down so that there's clear vision walking back and forth there. So there's other alternatives if you cannot get an agreement for that path. In fact, I think it would even be better just to put them on Rhine Road and down 15 Mile Road, and that way they would be able to get to the actual
But
park.
we really want a path system in place, so we'll do everything we can and keep those doors open with Henry Ford and the property to the north, and do whatever we can to integrate that system. And if we can connect to the park, great. I've done that in Auburn Hills. I've got a plan that's been approved under a conditional zoning agreement right off of Adams and M59. It connects, and there's going to be a bridge put in there that we added equal cost for it as developers, and it goes right into a park and a whole walking trail, the whole 9 yards. It's beautiful. It's a nice connection. I mean, if we can do it, we'll work in that regard.
You have another opportunity then to work with them and encourage the biking portion of it. And look, if we put this together, we can kind of circle around, make a circle to take down to the
I used to
park.
sit on the board with Henry Ford Hospital, so I know quite a few people there. And I think they just want to see what's going to go there. Once the construction's underway, they feel more comfortable, because the development to the north was concerned about safety and people walking into their facility. You know, it's a concern. So if we do it in the right way, they see that we're an upscale product and a community, I think they'll feel more comfortable. So I think it's just gonna take time.
Upscale product, you said, a
Yes.
little higher than the market.
Yep.
Exactly what are you going to offer in these units? You said
Well, they're gonna be built, nice quality product inside, cabinetry, the wood flooring, the nice appliances, there's high ceilings, more the modernistic look, the appealing, trend today. That's what it's gonna be. It's not gonna be just a run-of-the-mill apartment complex. It's gonna be a very nice, attractive apartment complex.
The balconies.
how many square feet?
Inside and out. The two-bedroom is 958 square feet, and that's 45 units. The one-bedroom is 651 square feet, there's only 10 of those. And the ordinance allows 600 versus the 651, and 750, where we're 958, so we're 208 feet in excess of what the ordinance requires, and we're 61 square feet bigger than what the ordinance is for the one-bedroom.
So there'll be living room, dining, kitchen
Yes,
area?
the floor plan's been involved.
Combination.
You'll see, it's a nice open space, the countertops and so on.
Residents at home don't get to see that floor plan, so tell me about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, if they go on the website, they can see everything in there. See, Mark's done an excellent job. He's an expert in multifamily, and I've had him represent several clients, and Fadi and I sat down with him to make sure we got a great product, because I'm a big part of this community as well. I've been here my whole career, so I wanted something excellent, and this is excellent, so.
So where are the elevators?
Well, Mark just pointed out,
The elevator is, where the stairs are on the right, so kind of right by the leasing office, so the eastern portion of the building, so move in, move out is all contained to that front area.
and we have a security system when you enter in, like if Amazon drops off boxes, which is part of the world today, and the mail, we've got it in that foyer, but they can't go beyond that area. This could be another door before you get into the residential component itself. So they can come into the foyer and then it locks down. And, so it's a nice system.
So any parking shed kind of areas, or is it all open parking?
Yes, all open, yes. No carports.
And first come, first served?
Yes.
Looks like a nice project. I wish you well.
Oh, thank you very much, appreciate it. I'm gonna stay up here in case.
No, I think that was the last one.
I'm all that's left. I'm all that's left. So sit down, yeah, and I got no questions for you. Fadi, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since we've had you here, but appreciate the work you've done in our community. And God, I just love to hear, we hear about it a lot with like police officers, you know, they live in the community, they grow up in the community, they come back and they stay in the community. And it's a little more rare with developers and people who are putting their money into the community, live here in Sterling Heights. So we appreciate you. I mean, I can tell you, man, I appreciate you and the work that you're doing here. Thank you. This is an exciting project, looks like a great project. So without any further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, but it's looking good, guys.
Thank you.
So, all right.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Phil. Merry Christmas. All right. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on that item? Council, we need a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Koski.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported with no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. We have a couple boards and commissions to go through tonight. First is to consider a nomination to the City of Sterling Heights, General Employees Retirement System Board. Anyone in the audience? If not, council, any nominations?
Mayor Taylor?
Mrs. Zarko.
This is for the nomination for the general's, okay. Resolve to nominate John Lamarato to the General Employees Retirement System Board to a term ending June 30th, 2025, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion, Mrs. Zarko?
You know, John has served us well on our other pension boards. I know that he has served on a couple state boards as well, so I think he would be very helpful for, to put him on another pension board.
Okay. Council, anyone else? No further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is another consideration for appointment to the City of Sterling Heights Boards and Commissions. Going once, twice. No comment from the public. Council, let me pull this one up. We have 2 commissions here. First is the Water System Advisory Council, 2 appointments, and these are to terms ending 12/31/2024. These are council appointments. Is there anyone who'd like to make these appointments?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Yanez.
a resolve to appoint Debbie Tao, am I pronouncing that right? Does anybody know? And Richard Giltz to the Water System Advisory Council to terms ending December 31st, 2024, subject to the appointees meeting qualifications set forth in Charter of 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion?
None from you, Mr. Mayor.
No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the Housing Commission. This is a city council appointment to a term ending 12/31/2027. Member seeking reappointment. Is there anyone who'd like to make this appointment?
Mayor Taylor,
Mrs. Schmidt.
resolve to appoint Michael Benitez to the Housing Commission to a term ending December 31st, 2027, subject to the appointee meeting the qualifications set forth in Charter 4.03 and taking the oath of office within 2 weeks.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that concludes that portion of our agenda tonight. We'll move on to communications from citizens, and I use that plural very lightly. Mr. Nelson.
So, 2 options.
Well, just like you, I thought we'd go out rather positive, but it was demonstrated tonight. There's a new high in the transparency issues that I have with this city. I'm sure the other 3 people that are tuned in at home are probably, would probably be very interested in what you just presented on marijuana. And when I said the new high, you got it, right? Got it. This needs to go out again after the first of the year and be presented. And there was no funds spent on this study whatsoever. I know it was made up of volunteers, but, and consultant, there was no funds. Does the city have to accept, the city council have to accept this report, even though it's going to be 1 month or 6 months from now? This is just ridiculous. It's really transparent. And I know you say you try to be transparent. It's all on there. Now I have to go and click on the manager's report to make sure there's nothing going to be presented that, I appreciate all the work that Melanie has done and her staff. It's very easy to move around. But now I've got to click on manager's report to make sure there's nothing that's going to be presented that needed to go in front of the people. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nelson. Sir? Okay, we'll move on to reports from city administration. Mr. Vanderpool?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Mr. Koszywski?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Council, anything else tonight?
Mayor Taylor.
Mrs. Sarowski?
Thank you. I'll take the first stab at, I'll be the first to go. So I have nothing but positive to say tonight, and I just wanted to wish the residents a Merry Christmas from my family, my sons Patrick, his wife Rebecca, Tony, his wife Shawnee, and my granddaughter Katie, Stephen, and Nicholas, and my husband, Steve. Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy New Year. Be safe. Yes, we are expecting a white Christmas, which is wonderful. I love snow, and I hope that you all enjoy your families and your time with each other and your friends. And that's all I have to say this time. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Sarowski. Council, anyone else? Mrs. Zarko?
I too want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever holiday you're celebrating. I want it to be with your family. But we also have to remember that if we do have the predicted snow that we are going to have this weekend, that we have many employees that will be out there making sure that we are all safe and they will not be with their families. So if you see a truck in your neighborhood, make sure you offer them maybe water, coffee, snack. But just remember, we're all celebrating with our families. They're not going to have the opportunity because they're going to make everything safe for us. So Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mrs. Zarko. Anyone else? Mrs. Kosky?
I also would like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Be safe and don't shovel the snow. Let somebody else do it.
I mean, what kind of advice is that?
Well,
else
I'm
is gonna
talking
do
for
it?
the seniors.
Oh, I've got kids.
Get the grandkids to do it.
I have kids.
Anyone
Taylor.
else? Mrs. Schmidt?
Thank you. I also would like to just wish everyone a very happy and healthy holiday season. Merry Christmas. And as I said at Sterling Christmas, New Year's Eve, there's a little game going to be on. And go blue.
Go green.
Mr. Yanez, any message for our Detroit Lions this week?
Yeah,
Go Lions.
apparently I'm the official good luck charm for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
We'll take whatever we can
This is
get.
a Lions town, not a Michigan football.
This is a Lions.
Definitely a Michigan football town. What are you
When
talking
you say
about?
go blue, it's Honolulu blue. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Through
Silver
the,
and
through
blue.
the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, I just, frankly, I watched TV and I know they said some snow might be coming. My phone app doesn't tell me how much. Is there predictions of significant snowfall?
Mr. Vanderpool?
Thank you, Mayor. In this particular area, we're going to be on Thursday into Friday. It looks like we're going to get rain. The low's going to be right over us, but we'll be on the wet side of it. West side of the state could get 14 inches or more. We could get, I've heard ranges anywhere from 4 to 6 inches of snow, but who knows? Let's hope it's on the lower end, but if we're in the 4 to 6 range, we will definitely be in a snow emergency. So it could be very problematic for us. The bigger problem could be the winds, which are expected to gust at 50 knots, which could cause major power outages, and the temperatures are supposed to drop into the single digits. So this could be a very rough weekend. Even with 4 inches of snow and blizzard-like conditions and power outages, could be a real problem.
So let's talk about that really quick, because what scares me more than snow is rain, which turns to freezing rain, and ice, and heavy wind, and that equals power outages. Where are we in regards to potential warming centers if someone loses power?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So as I mentioned, our municipal security team is meeting on Thursday. We do have procedures set up for warming centers. So for example, in the past, we've had to open our senior center periodically. We have some options with the community center. We also have, if there's more broad-based outages, Stevenson High School. And we also have some emergency procedures set up with our hotels. So we have a long list of options that we can choose from depending on the severity of the storm. But we'll be monitoring that very closely. We'll be in contact with our DT representatives and all of our stakeholders that help us through these emergencies, including our contacts with the Red Cross. We have numerous contractors that we work with as well in emergencies. So I feel like we're very well prepared to handle it, but nevertheless, it could be highly disruptive to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Mayor, I just want to say, well, first of all, I guess I'm going to spend a good part of my day getting my snow blower up and running tomorrow. But I just want to say thank you to every one of my colleagues for I think what turned out to be a really strong year for us. We did a lot of good work here on this council. Thank you to the citizens for all their input. I'm looking forward to 2023, and I hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Yanis. Mrs. Koski?
Sure.
Did I already get you? Oh, I did.
I'm the
get you.
one who hasn't gone.
Mr. Radke.
I said, don't shove it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. How could I forget? I was going to give you another chance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I guess.
Okay, let me add to that.
Okay.
Hire someone else to do it.
Like I do with my lawn, just have your wife.
Like you do.
Just have your wife do it. She draws a line in the snow. The
honey,
snow is
go
going
do
to be my
snow.
job. The snow is going to be my job.
Okay.
Mr. Radke.
So a little bit of a couple things here. First, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Happy Holidays, however you celebrate. I think, like Councilman Yanis said, we had a very strong year here, and I'm looking forward to the new year and really digging in our heels, and really just getting our elbows into it, because now that we don't have to run every 2 years, I think it gives us more time to really try to think about the future of our town and not just having to run for office every year. I also want to say go blue. As a graduate of the University of Michigan, I know we're going to beat TCU. I know we're going to beat Georgia or Ohio, whoever, doesn't matter. We're going to be national champions this year. I have a feeling. So I'm all in for that. Through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, I know that we have a snow emergency possible, and I guess I would just urge you, if it's Christmas, let's see if we can hold off at least for a day, because it's no fun if you have friends and family visiting to have to possibly get tickets, because people are just going to get the tickets then, because it's just going to be what it is. They're not going to be able to move the cars. And also, if we declare a snow emergency on Christmas, our employees have to come in on Christmas and do the work. So I'm hopeful that, I know other cities don't always declare a snow emergency. Ann Arbor doesn't always declare one, even if it's necessary, for this very reason. I would urge us maybe to think about it, just because it's no fun getting a ticket on Christmas. I guess that's all I have. I look forward to seeing everyone next year, 2023. It really feels like it's flying by. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you all on council. I appreciate your comments today. And I too want to just say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to the community. It has been a tremendous year, some really incredible memories, and I think we've accomplished quite a bit as a team together this year, the city council, the administration, every city employee, and our volunteers. And so I'm looking very much forward to having another successful year next year. To all the sports fans out there, enjoy. Pains me to say, but I'll say go blue, all right?
Thank you.
Go blue. Enjoy the festivities, have fun, and we will see you back here as the 9 and 7 Lions are looking to wrap up a playoff spot at our next city council meeting. And, all right, that's it. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. No discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I think